Good evening. The Supreme Court on Monday sent a notice to the central government asking it to levy an annual environment compensation charge on existing private cars in the National Capital Region due to rising air pollution. The SC order came after senior advocate Hari Salve filed an application that also seeks to impose a similar charge on new private diesel cars to be paid to dealers at the time of purchase. The notice was issued by a three-judge bench headed by Justice Aftab Alam. The application filed by senior advocate Hari Salve, like I've already told you, who is assisting the court as amicus curiae in adjudication of matters related to pollution, pleaded that a fee of 25% of the cost be levied on every new diesel vehicle which causes more pollution. The proposal is based on a report from the Environment Pollution Prevention and Control Authority, EPCA. If Salve's suggestions are to be implemented, then a person purchasing a diesel car costing, say, 6 lakhs would pay a green tax of rupees 1.5 lakh. If the cost of an SUV is rupees 16 lakh, for example, then the buyer would have to pay rupees 4 lakh extra charge. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight on The Big Picture, we discuss the Apex Court's directive to the centre. We ask our panellists whether this directive, as the auto industry is sure to prefer sometime soon, will stall technological advances in the auto sector. Is the move an unfair move for diesel car makers, or is this the need of the hour, keeping in mind the alarming levels of pollution in the NCR and the country as a whole? We'll discuss all these issues and more on the show tonight, and joining me is an expert panel. Tutu Dhawan is with me in the studio. He's an auto expert. Also joining us is Roshan Pavaiya, who's the Deputy Managing Editor of cartalk.com. Joining us in just a bit will be Sunita Narayan, who is the Director General for the Centre for Science and Environment. I'd like to start the show, however, if I could, with Ramesh. Ramesh, I'll put you the first question. Now, the amicus curiae in the PL, Hari Salve, he says that the idea was to discourage people from indiscriminately buying diesel cars which have a damaging effect on the environment. First thoughts on the judgment, on the directive.
Right. I actually question the methodology being adopted over here of coming out with a one-time 25% tax on the cost of the diesel car, because this is a huge burden. And two, when it comes to pollution norms, I really don't agree with that, because globally, diesel cars are seen to be less polluting than petrol cars. If you look at Europe, for example, you have a higher percentage of diesel cars on the roads, and diesel cars are also more fuel efficient, which means liter per liter, you're consuming less when you're driving a diesel vehicle than a petrol vehicle. And when you look at the pollution, the emissions of diesel cars, you find that, yes, diesel cars have higher particulate matter, and they have
higher NO2.
Higher nitrous oxides. But when it comes to carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and hydrocarbons, which are the actual greenhouse gases responsible for global warming and all these kind of things, petrol is far more than diesel.
So you're not really in agreement with this particular judgment?
No.
I want to get Tutu Dhawan's reaction on this. You heard what Roshan had to say. Would you agree with him?
I agree with him 100%, because I think this is a knee-jerk reaction, just trying to curb diesel fuel vehicles. On the contrary, I think we should look at the larger damage of diesel which is happening to the environment, and that's the industry which is all around in the NCR, including Delhi. If you see, we are just about 10 kilometers radius is the population living, and the rest we are surrounded all by industries. Today, each industry has got a generator, and none of the generators have any norms of pollution. They don't have catalytic converters, they don't have, and moreover, most of the generators are made in your backyard. I mean, throwing every environment thing into the air by not having sound pollution, they are not having exhaust pollution, and so on. So, and moreover, I mean, why can't we divert all the excess traffic that is coming into Delhi and moving out from here, from the north and going to the south? On top of that, why can't we have a better transport system?
Right.
Where the vehicles are standing on crossings for more than 5 to 10 minutes. I mean, why are we wasting
That's a very interesting point, Mr. Dhawan, that you raised. I would like to speak more on that point, but in just a bit, I've been told that Jagdish Khattar has just joined us. Mr. Khattar is the founder chairman of Carnation India Private Limited. Welcome to The Big Picture, Mr. Khattar. Tutu Dhawan seems to think that this is a knee-jerk reaction, perhaps. Would you agree with that statement? Is it a knee-jerk reaction? Is it really practical?
No, I think it's not practical, and Mr. Tutu Dhawan was absolutely on the right track that the issues involved, reasons are so many. What happens is that in our country and in our government, wherever we have to take decisions which are difficult to execute, we put it on the back burner and we come forward with an easy solution. I think what he has talked about, generators, diesel, there are so many things which are causing this pollution. Listen, we are very concerned about pollution. Let there be no doubt about it that we are also equally concerned. We are also here, we are inhaling everything. But we must have a practical solution. So there are so many other things which are causing pollution about which we are not able to tackle. Now coming back as far as the diesel cars are concerned, I think the first gentleman mentioned about what the new diesel technology and all is. I said the issue is that in our country there is a skewed pricing policy between petrol and diesel.
Right.
One must give credit to the NDA government that by April 2010, I think 2010, yes, April 2010, the difference between petrol and diesel was only 9 rupees. When the difference was 9 rupees, there was no preference for diesel cars. Petrol was selling as much.
Right, right.
But when you make the difference to 30 rupees, everything comes on fire.
Right, point taken,
and
sir.
our answer is, you put a tax on it.
Point taken, sir.
No, once again, you put a tax, then number of vehicles will not get reduced. People will still buy those vehicles.
Right, point taken, sir. We've had three anti-views here. I've been told that Sunita Narayan, who's the Director General at the Center for Science and Environment, has also joined us. Welcome to the show, Sunita Narayan. First of all, three anti-views for the directive that the SC gave the Center today. I would like to hear your views. Your particular NGO, your particular organization was at the forefront of putting this PIL forward. Your views on the directive to the Center.
Well, you know, I've missed the three speakers before me, but I'm well aware of the arguments that are made by industry on diesel. And I think it's very important for us to understand that the time for delays and the time for trying to find one excuse or the other not to get rid of diesel in vehicles is over. Let's be very clear that the price differential has been kept by government, and that, as I presume that was Mr. Khattar who spoke before me, because that's always what he says, is that because of the price differential, people are moving to buy diesel. Now, if industry says that the tax will do nothing and people will still buy diesel, then why is it against putting in this tax? And the fact is that we know that there is a big loophole. Government has never said that we should have diesel cars, but industry continues to make and sell diesel cars, which is today jeopardizing our health. So let's stop blaming everything from trucks and public transport to generator sets. We are doing all that. We are trying to find a fun answer to public transport. We went to court yesterday asking for the expressway to be built for commercial vehicles. We are working very hard for better standards on generator sets. Right. So we do not need the automobile industry to tell us that there are other problems.
Right, I take your point. I take your point.
And the automobile industry is too powerful.
I take your point. I would like to get Roshan on this right now. Sunita has a point. Yeah. There is an environmental argument here. According to figures quoted by Salve in his suggestions, the level of suspended particulate matter in the NCR is 8 times higher than the prescribed limit, while the level of NO2, nitrogen dioxide, was 2.8 times more than the limit. In that case, Roshan, should we assume that the Supreme Court is taking up a cause that is worthy, and also because everyone else just seems to think business profits save the industry?
Well, I question the methodology of introducing this thing, because if you look at it, the number of passenger vehicles which are diesel and SUVs, cars and SUVs, which is what I assume Ms. Sunita is talking about, is only about 15% of the total consumption of diesel in this country. Now, taxing just this 15%, adding a 25% tax to the sale of these vehicles. If you look at the average cost of a car, diesel car, when you look at small cars and to larger cars, it comes to about 6 lakh rupees or whatever. When you look at that cost, you're going to net about 8,100 to 8,200 crores from this tax proposal. 8,100 or 8,200 crores is less than 10% of the subsidy burden that the government is facing when it comes to diesel subsidies.
Right.
So this is not the way in which it has to be done. You have to look at a larger view. Of course, fuel price differential has to be reduced. And my second point is, when the fuel price differential is reduced, say 2 years, 3 years from now, if the government can do it, I mean, political reasons aside, if fuel prices are equal, if a person has paid 25% more now, will he be reimbursed in any way? I see this as a kind of an advance tax.
I want to come to Mr. Turu Dhawan before I go to Mr. Khattar. Mr. Dhawan, he talked about the price differential. I'll talk about that as well. But first, I want to ask you this: the application has said, you also mentioned, Salve's application mentioned that Delhi has exhausted all soft options, so-called soft options, to check air pollution, such as imposing a cess, to create an air ambient fund, subsidy conversion to battery and other non-polluting vehicles. Is it surprising then, sir, that the Supreme Court has given such a view? No so-called soft options seem to be working at all.
No, I guess we have to start finding ways of trying to improve our infrastructure by which we can start reducing our pollution. This is not the solution of taxing diesel cars that you are going to start reducing pollution. You first have to start building up your infrastructure on transportation, including the railways. As Roshan also said, they are also one of the biggest consumers of diesel. And of course, look at the amount of railways that are going through Delhi also. So it is not just targeting cars and SUVs that is going to help you. It is basically your infrastructure where the cars are standing on crossing for more than 5 to 8 minutes with everything running, air conditioning and all those things.
So you're saying look at the larger picture,
Yes,
don't just have a narrow-minded view. Mr. Khattar, let me come to you very quickly, sir. The question of a personal vehicle usage, the court has also said very clearly that the idea is to discourage excess personal usage and has recommended that steps be taken to strengthen the public transport system in the capital region that runs mostly these days on CNG and is far more environment friendly. That seems like a pretty solid, pretty sound idea on paper, but there's a big but there, isn't it, Mr. Khattar?
Before I answer that, I think Madam Sunita mentioned about if the price differential is reduced.
So we'll come to that in a bit. We'll come to that in a bit, sir. I promise you we'll discuss that as well.
No, it's a very important. I'll come to that answer. But this is important to understand that in India, if you buy a car or any vehicle, you get 80% people get a loan. You can add the loan of that extra tax and you pay an EMI over a period of 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. It gets dispersed. But the customer feels a pinch whenever he goes to a petrol pump to fill up the gas. He is more concerned about recurring cost than the fixed cost. This is an Indian psyche, and this is the experience that we have. That's my only answer to what Madam Narayan said. And now coming back to what you said, who can dispute? Who can dispute?
Yes, Sunita, let him complete. I'll come to you. Let him complete. I'll come to you, Sunita. Let him complete. Yes.
Okay.
See, the point is, don't force people to go off the road, but create alternatives so that they feel it is much better.
Right.
Ever since metro has come, I stay in Noida, I have so many people coming from Gurgaon on metro today. So the more public transport you improve, the more widespread and deeper it is, people will themselves, I mean, who wants to travel for an hour and a half from residence to office and have that traffic jam? They won't do it. But give them an alternative.
Right. Mr. Khattar.
Give them a good alternative, a neat and clean alternative, that 1 hour they'll spend doing some work instead of sitting in the traffic jam.
Right. Sunita Narayan, you waited really patiently. I'll ask you to wait for 30 more seconds. We'll take a short break and I'll come to you directly after the break. Don't go anywhere. This is just getting interesting on the big picture. Keep watching. Welcome back to The Big Picture. Sunita Narayan is still with us, and as promised, I will go directly to her first. Before you respond to Mr. Khattar's question and his comments, Sunita, please have a look. Please listen to my question as well, so you can answer both after that. Now, let me play devil's advocate here. Let's explore the hue and cry the auto industry is already raising about the issue. This is the auto industry's logic. High subsidies on diesel are busting the budget. Fixing the problem means deregulating diesel prices and reducing the cost gap between diesel and petrol. Industry also says that trying to solve the problem by increasing the price gap between diesel and petrol cars is not the solution. It will skew the market for automobiles. Do you agree with the theory that raising diesel prices is a much better remedy than taxing diesel cars some more?
Yeah. No, let me make it very clear. This is not a new debate for us, and we have made it very clear that we are in favor of raising diesel prices. But we do believe that that is politically impossible for government to do. And we believe that automobile industry also knows this, and therefore it continues to hide behind the helplessness, the sheer absolute helplessness of government to raise and equalize the price of diesel and petrol. And therefore, a Mercedes-Benz today continues to drive on a fuel which is kept in the name of the poor of this country. And let us be very clear, this is immoral and this is environmentally toxic. So I think the industry needs to find new arguments if it has to fight us on this. It is also true that the Indian industry, automobile industry, has basically been so powerful that even when the petroleum minister has been asking for a tax on diesel cars, that he has not been able to get his way because they have complete control over the finance ministry, it would seem, as well as the heavy industries ministry.
But Sunita, my question is...
I cannot understand why, no, I am answering your question, why this government has no concern for public health.
Right.
Okay.
But why does it have to be a fight
so
between...
does that answer your
why
question?
Does it have to be a fight between your organization and the auto industry? Why can't we work together to get better emission norms and better cars, better technology so that the pollution is kept under control and also the industry doesn't suffer?
Let's be very clear.
In a minute, Mr. Khattar, in a minute, I'll come to you.
We have pushed... No. Let me get a chance to answer. There are three people there. There are three people against me. I need chances to answer them.
Please
because these people do shout me down and they don't let me answer.
Nobody
so let me be very clear. We have pushed industry. We have pushed industry. We have improved emission standards. We have got Euro 1, Euro 2, Euro 3 and now Euro 4 standards, Bharat Stage 4 standards with 50 ppm.
Right.
But we are clear that that is not clean diesel. We are also very clear that the under-recoveries in the refinery sector, because of the 15% use of private diesel cars, is bleeding the refinery sector along with all other under-recoveries.
Right, ma'am, right.
Which means that we cannot even ask for Euro 4 emissions across this country.
Right, ma'am.
So let us be very clear. We need public transport. I agree with Mr. Khattar. But we also need either a ban on diesel cars or a tax on it or equalize the price between diesel and petrol.
Mr. Khattar, respond to that very briefly, sir.
You have a choice.
Mr. Khattar, respond to that, please.
Okay. The point I think she has mentioned, in the last 6, 7, 8 years, the automobile industry has brought the latest technology till Bharat 4. Now, hard decisions. It's a very soft decision to increase the tax. I think in our country, the biggest people is, what is the easiest way to do is to increase the tax, because only a paperwork is required. Now, my question is, if there are today 15 million cars on the road, and much more as far as the goods trucks are concerned, more than 60% are old technologies. They are over 10 to 12 to 15 to 20 years old. They are giving more pollution because they do not conform to the latest emission norms. Do we have a policy of scrapping old vehicles? I think if we were to scrap those vehicles, or at least incentivize scrapping those vehicles, much of your pollution will get reduced because of that.
Yeah.
Right, right.
So the point I'm making is by new technologies,
let me reply to that.
Sunita, you've had your time, please.
Let me reply to that.
You've had your time. I have other guests in the studio. Mr.
Okay.
Khattar, please complete. I have to come to my studio guest. Please complete.
No, I've answered that. What I'm saying is
Right.
that soft option, I think our country is not capable of dealing with issues
Not a soft
which
option.
are execution to be done on the ground. Easiest thing is to increase tax, and it is a very populist thing to do. But it is not going to make a difference.
Right.
If
Ladies and
your own
gentlemen-
vehicles are still there, your generators, your bijli is not there, those things will still remain.
Right. Mr. Khattar, I take your point. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll come back to calmer atmospheres now. I'll come back to Roshan Poya on this. This particular question has been on my mind ever since I read the directive. If this is implemented, suppose it is implemented, won't that increase consumption of petrol as people will naturally switch to petrol cars? Or is that a too simplistic way of putting that? And if that happens, if people do start switching to petrol cars, that is definitely not good for us. Even I understand that, as we are already over-dependent on oil imports.
Right. I think what's going to happen here is not necessarily a shift to petrol cars, because people might shift a segment. As Mr. Khattar said, that nearly 80% of vehicles are financed, and people take loans. Now, if a person was going to buy a 10 lakh rupee vehicle, diesel vehicle, and with this 25% tax, it would have become 12.5 lakhs. And his on-road cost would have become, say, like 14 lakhs. So instead of buying a 10 lakh rupee vehicle, he'll shift to an 8 lakh rupee vehicle, and his on-road cost will be about 11 lakhs, including this, when you add this 25% thing. And this is again a diesel vehicle. And you have choices now. You have a Toyota Innova at a 10 lakh price point. You have a Maruti Ertiga at an 8 lakh price point. Both are 7-seaters, both serve similar purposes. And so he's got a choice over there. Would it make a shift towards petrol vehicles? Not necessarily, but if it did make a shift to petrol vehicles are far less fuel efficient than diesel. And as I had mentioned earlier, they have higher amount of carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and hydrocarbon emissions, which again, Ms. Sunita Narayan would probably be against. So, I mean, basically she's going to be against petrol or diesel.
Let me come to Dhawan now. You heard what all the other three had to say. What is your view on this? What is your take on this particular thing? If people start switching to petrol cars, Roshan doesn't think that's going to happen in a big way. Would you agree with that? And what is your take on the whole thing?
I agree with Roshan totally. And in fact, this is not the solution of increasing taxes, that you are going to have a deterrent for buying diesel cars. As Mr. Khattar also said, it's a one-time tax that you are paying and one doesn't mind. It's yes, initially there is going to be a shock amongst new buyers, but then the shock gets over. Today the philosophy of a consumer is he pinches him when he goes and gets a tank up done, rather than paying a one-time or an EMI he pays for another 5 years. It makes no difference to him.
Right. I have very little time on the show left, but I want to get one brief comment each from Ms. Sunita Narayan as well as Mr. Khattar. I'll go to Mr. Khattar first. Sir, I have 30 seconds for you. Why do you think this particular directive, if you had to sum it up in 30 seconds, why is it unfair to the auto industry, and why do you think this is the wrong prescription for the particular problem? 30 seconds, sir.
The reason is because government is not capable of taking hard decisions which need execution, public transport, roads, etc. So the easiest thing to do is this, and tell everyone that yes, we have done it. It's not going to make any difference.
Right. If I can come to Sunita Narayan now, you of course are very positive about the Supreme Court directive to the centre, and you have worked really hard, your organisation has worked really hard so that we could see this day today. Why do you think the Supreme Court, whatever they said today in the directive, why do you think that should be implemented? You have 30 seconds as well.
Well, very clearly, if you believe that public health is important, then you have to be able to control the growing numbers of diesel vehicles. Now, you can do that by putting a ban on them, or you can do that by putting a tax on them. From all your speakers, what is also very clear is that perhaps what is in addition needed is an annual tax on diesel. So you have a one-time tax which actually stops them from buying it, but then you have an annual tax which has a differential between petrol and diesel, so that's a disincentive. We are not against diesel, petrol or anything. We just want clean air. And let's be very clear, the current diesel technology is far more polluting than current petrol.
Right, right,
So
ma'am.
we want public transport, we want trucks to move to cleaner diesel, but we also want diesel cars to be reduced.
Right. I have slightly, I wanted to put in one question which I did. I want to put it now. First, I'll go to Mr. Dhawan. Kirit Parekh has been, what Mr. Narayan just said, he's been suggesting that there should be an annual tax on this. Do you think that suggestion holds any water? Do you think that's what's
I don't think that's practical at all. And in fact, I want to make one other point is the only industry which you can really monitor is the automotive industry by telling them Euro 4, Euro 5, Euro 6 and so on. There is no other industry like generator industry or your trains or your engines and so on where you can put catalytic converters and try and curb that. So this is the only disciplined industry by which you can put a cap and start taking the maximum out of the minimum that you put into it.
Right.
So, and it will be a total harakari for the auto industry.
Well, last word on the show I must give to Roshan Povaiya. We have very little time left.
Yeah.
Tell me, Roshan, you heard what all my three guys had to say. What would you see? Being an auto journalist, I would expect an independent opinion from you.
Yeah.
What really is, if not this directive, if not these directives to the central government that the Supreme Court has given, if not that, what is the alternative? Is the position that Sunita Narayan is taking too extreme, or do you think it's too extreme on the edges? Is there a middle path?
There is a middle path. I mean, right now it is an immediate question of the economy over the environment, actually. If you look at it, the government's fuel subsidy bill is huge and they have to somehow reduce that. But by reducing it just by about 8,200 crores, as I had mentioned, it's really not going to help. The middle path is that, yes, at some point fuel prices have to become equal, and at that point, driving a diesel car is actually doing more good to the environment than a petrol car, because diesel cars are more fuel efficient, 25% more fuel efficient, in fact, than an equivalent petrol car. So you're going to be consuming that much less fuel, which in the end is good for the environment as well.
On that note, we must end the show. I'm sure Sunita Narayan would disagree with you, but I wish I had half an hour more for this discussion. Unfortunately, I don't. I must wrap up the show on this particular note. I must thank all my guests for joining me on The Big Picture. Sunita Narayan, thank you so much for coming on The Big Picture. Jagdish Khattar, thank you so much for coming on The Big Picture for the first time. Roshan Povaiya, as well as Tutu Dhawan, thank you for coming to the studio. This is Atar Khan saying goodbye, good night, and thank you for watching.